All right, greetings everybody. So good to see everybody here tonight. I really appreciate you taking your time to come hear me give this presentation about the Daniel Bill Music Studio. Of course, I see a lot of familiar faces out there. Have some friends, some family members, and actually a few students, which is really exciting because they are the reason I do what I do, and they are such a huge part of why I'm seeing such results and success from these really hardworking students. So once again, just want to thank everybody. This is the part 2 of my webinar series. In case you weren't able to make it yesterday, we had part 1 yesterday. It was called Beyond the Lesson, a new way to learn music, and it got a lot into the differences between traditional lessons versus what I do in my program. Tonight's presentation is called Inside the DBM Studio, and it goes into pretty great detail about what is it like for a student to be in my studio. What does a typical week look like? What does the music program look like? What happens over the course of a month? So before we get started, I would love to just connect with everybody that's out there. If you don't mind, maybe dropping a note in the chat and just maybe saying who you are and where you're joining us from, what town, or and maybe what brought you here tonight. Maybe you're a student, maybe you're a parent, maybe you just are a friend or family member. I would love to hear from you guys in the chat and just kind of connect with everybody and say hello. Hey, Madison. Who else is here tonight? We got a whole bunch of people. It's great to see you guys out there. But I'll be looking at the chat throughout the presentation tonight, so I know I'm going to be recording this and sharing this with future friends and family members. So I'll engage with it as we go, but I'm going to mainly stick to my presentation. But if you have any good questions or thoughts, I will work that into my presentation. So please feel free to drop it in there at some point. All right, so let's dive right in here. So first thing is, I kind of already went over this, but this is part 2 of my webinar. So if you really would like to learn more, be sure to go to my YouTube channel because that's where I post my longer videos to see part 1. But today we're going to talk a little bit about, how my program works and what makes it different. And by the end of this presentation, you should have a very clear picture in your mind of what it is like to be a member of the Daniel Bill Music Studio. And also, if you're considering joining, you'll have a good idea if it might be a good fit for you. So I want to start by briefly just touching on a few points I talked about in part 1, and that is, what is the problem with traditional lessons? And I want to start by saying that I have such great respect for many of my colleagues that are traditional private music teachers, because that was me for years. I don't believe it's the quality of the teacher. I just think that the system can be tweaked and worked better for students. So, I have such great respect for teachers that are still doing traditional private lessons. I just think that I found a better way. And I think that, with any good teacher, changing up your system to serve students in a more individualized way and provide them more of a community atmosphere and an overall more holistic approach to just learning music, I believe is a much more successful path. So traditional lessons, I think everybody can basically figure this out. It's usually once a week, 30 minutes. There really is no feedback between lessons. The traditional format is when that half an hour is up, you don't see your teacher again for another week, and you're just kind of on your own, and you do the best you can. And parents usually do the best they can to get their child to practice, and that's usually a fight. And they're kind of left without guidance and hope that when they come next week, they'll be ready to go. Learning can feel alone. It can feel isolated. There's really not a community sense to music lessons. It's not a sports team. It's not a dance studio. And I just think students don't have enough structure to really find that success on a week-to-week basis. So that's a little bit of my thoughts on traditional lessons. So the question is, what is the gap we're solving here? How are we going to solve some of those issues? And in my opinion, they need more than just weekly instruction. They need that feedback throughout the week. They need a little more sense of musical mentorship, I would say, as opposed to, just having that 30-minute block, 45-minute block, whatever it is, once a week. And I believe that with more structure, more accountability, and a supportive community, they can start to find that. And I think having the right environment is going to help them actually build their skills and their confidence much, much faster. So my program that I started only about 8 months ago now, August 2025 was when I launched this program, was really designed to be more of a musical mentoring program. That's the word I keep coming back to, is that I feel like I'm more of a mentor than just an expert in music. My program combines a very strong structure, a strong sense of feedback and community all into one environment. The students don't just get supported live with me in a lesson atmosphere, but they also get more support outside of the lessons as well. And we're looking for consistency in their growth, not just 30 minutes once a week and seeing that growth stalled maybe with less touch points. And by the way, I just want to say hello to people in the chat I see Kelly out there. I see Gina, Jocelyn, the Scabarosi family, Tom, Madison said hi. We have Joan out there tonight. Thank you so much, guys, for being here tonight. I can't wait to keep telling you more about this. This has become such a passion for me to talk about what I'm doing. So let's get started by just summarizing, I guess, the DBM studio. Daniel Bill Music, I've gotten into using acronyms, can really be summed up with three pillars. And those three pillars are your path, your community, and your future. And I'm going to go into that in pretty good detail tonight. But to summarize it in one sentence, your path means that I'm going to be giving personalized guidance that is tailored to each student. Not me teaching every student the same thing because I think it's essential. I think everyone has to learn this, but personalizing it for each student. Your community, I believe in group learning. I believe in collaboration and giving students a chance to grow as a community together and giving them lots of performance opportunities in a safe, supportive atmosphere. And your future. I think I'm a part of people's future in this program. I'm helping them to develop confidence, skills, and long-term musical growth. I really think learning music can be connected to a lot of life skills, learning to collaborate, communicate, and present something to other people that you've worked hard on and that you're proud of. So keep those three in mind throughout the night, because your path, your community, your future, everything I do can be traced back to those three pillars. So let's go a little bit more into your path. And, I have a few students here on the call tonight that I might even tie into this because every student I teach in my studio, I can think instantly in my head how I've customized my program to suit their needs. So personalized guidance means that you have to know the student first. You have to ask them what they're interested in. What do they want to sing? What do they want to do? Do they want to write music? Do they want to play piano? Do they want to understand music theory more? I've been very fortunate that I am not a one-trick pony and I can teach lots of different things. In my studio, I can cover voice, piano, guitar, songwriting, music theory, and any combination of those two. The lessons and the feedback are really adapted to individual goals, interests, and experience. Students are encouraged to tell me what they want to do. I don't just tell them, here's what I do, A, B, C, and then we're going to go to lesson 2, then lesson 3. That's not how I work. The instruction is flexible. It's not limited to like a one-size-fits-all approach. I adapt it to every student uniquely. Progress is intentional with direction that meets the student where they are. So it's a great starting point for any student that has very unique musical tastes or a certain path. Just want to briefly pause for a second and just talk about, some of the students in my studio, like Madison, for example, who's joined us here tonight. We have done everything from K-pop to musical theater to rock music to you name it. And one of the cool things about like working with students that tell me what they want is I get to learn a little bit more about music too. Madison, drop the name in the chat. Is it True Blood? Am I getting that band right? Like an up and coming band on social media that Madison was lucky enough to go see in concert. She got to sing one of those songs, not just in her lessons with me, but she performed it at a coffee house event, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. But, I get to learn, I get to grow and learn because I'm allowing other students to influence me and telling me what they're interested in. Take Jocelyn, for example, another student I have. The very nature of everything I've done with Jocelyn has been customized to her because Jocelyn approached me and wanted to do songwriting, bringing me her lyrics, her melody. There are many teachers that are not comfortable doing that with a student because it's so unexpected, the outcomes, and being able to work with a student and say like, all right, let's hear your music. Let me see if I can support you in this. And when I started with Jocelyn just this past summer, and she was there pretty much at the beginning of my program, and we got the chance to work together, putting together songs from beginning to end, piece by piece, and that was completely student directed. So that's a great example of like me following a student's path, and not telling them, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do in my studio. So those kind of things I look forward to so much when I get to work with my students. Now, let's jump ahead to the next pillar, which is your community. And hold on one second. There we go. Just switching over screens here. So I realized long ago that students feel alone in private lessons. They have a great relationship with me. I always have built really good rapport with my private students, but they never got a chance to really feel like they were part of something bigger, that there was a lot of other musicians, kids out there that love music just as much as them. And a big thing too, and I'll get into this, is that this anxiety and fear of performing in front of other people. And that became something that they only got to do once or twice a year at a recital. And it became a big fear factor. And I thought, like, how can I accomplish a few things? How can I make students feel like they're part of a supportive community of people, not just a supportive teacher, but also normalize growing and performing in front of other people? So what I'm going to describe to you here is one of the ways I've solved that. So my group learning environment is usually about 4 to 10 students per session. It depends on it. And students get to learn from each other by hearing updates from each other, having discussions with each other. They feel supported and actually build relationships with each other throughout the weeks because they see the progress. They share the joy that that student feels when they succeed, and then vice versa. They get to encourage one each other, grow together. I'll go back to Jocelyn for a second, who just put a really nice note in the chat, by the way. You should definitely check it out. She said, I deeply appreciate how being in the DBM has always helped me with my craft. I always wanted to write songs, but never had the means until now. That's awesome, Jocelyn. And you know what the reason I'm bringing up Jocelyn again is her classmates in the group got to see her song start as a small idea and grow into something new. So maybe Jocelyn would come, or any student would come with a verse and a chorus, and that's it, just a spark, a little idea. And then a few weeks down the road, now we're hearing like 2 verses and a chorus, and then now we're adding guitar, now we're adding a bridge. And to be part of that collaborative process where they can actually hear the progress of a student growing and performing. And by the way, putting notes in the chat during these group classes too. And then after a student performs, they get to go back and read and like they get some ideas and they realize that they're connecting with other people. When you have a one-on-one teacher and that's the only person you ever interact with, there's going to be a good connection there, but it's limited. It's only one person's reactions, one person's opinions. So in that community atmosphere, there's just so much interaction and communication that goes back and forth. It is. Thanks, Madison. You make me laugh. Preach. And I think but the other big thing is that students overcome their fear of playing in front of each other, playing in front of anybody, and showing that growth on a weekly basis where people are performing whatever they're working on, even whether it's a small segment or a full song, and everybody wants everybody to succeed. Everybody wants to see that growth, and people show up knowing like, okay, like every week they're going, knowing they've made progress. They know they're going to make some mistakes. Their voice might crack. They might hit a wrong note, but it's the same people in the groups every week. And, new students come and go sometimes, but it's the same mindset. And I think that's the big thing I try to accomplish with my studio is community, like a supportive place where everybody has the same goal to develop their confidence as musicians and as people. So that is the pillar number 2. And pillar number 3 is your future, because I do really deeply believe that I'm not just teaching music, I'm teaching confidence. I'm teaching people to discover their creativity, their joy, and I think music accomplishes that. This is long-term musical growth, not just short-term results. Helping students to develop confidence. That is a transferable skill. If you can play the piano or sing a song or share something like that you've written with other people, that transfers to other areas of life. That's going to help you build the confidence to do anything, give a presentation in front of people, get on stage and dance in front of people. Being able to do that consistently on a weekly basis, it has a huge impact on musicians. The regular feedback and all the guided practice that students get every week, that builds up over time, and that sets the foundation for a strong future as a musician. and the habits that they form in the structure of my studio. It lays down a foundation for future music making and lifelong music involvement. And honestly, I think over time, as their confidence grows, they become independent musicians. And, sometimes when a student goes off to college or maybe their schedule changes, my hope is that I've ingrained in them a confidence to be creative and to share music with other people. So future is a big part of what I think here. We're not just thinking it week to week, we're thinking overall into the future. So we bring all that together and kind of see how does that actually look in the program. Let's talk about what the student experience is like. Because honestly, I don't just teach lessons. I have a system now. I have a structure. And the group lessons and the feedback and all the performance opportunities all kind of work together to support everything I just talked about. So let's jump in and talk about what a typical month looks like in my studio. So each month follows a structured cycle, okay? And it's kind of based on certain weeks. And then make sure you check out the chat because Jocelyn is already talking about how impactful the feedback submissions have been. We're going to talk about that shortly, Jocelyn. I have a whole slide to talk about that, so we will get into that in just a little bit. So most months have about 4 weeks. So I decided to make every month be almost like a goal-setting mindset every single month. Like I said, I'm not just thinking week to week here. I'm thinking we're in a structure and a system. I want every student to have direction and purpose. So weeks 1 through 3, my weeks start on a Monday, by the way. It really focuses on building skills, through the group lessons and getting that feedback. Every month we want to have an idea, what is our goals this month? What are we working on? And because I'm flexible and I like to personalize things, those goals change from month to month. Sometimes students have an audition coming up and they just want to focus on that. Other times students are, preparing for a musical and maybe they want to sing something from the musical they're in. Other times a student wants to pick up the guitar and maybe try dabbling in that. I have one student, Brendan, he was focusing on his musical auditions for a while, and then just recently he decided to pick up the guitar again, and then just on the last Coffee House concert, he sang Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. And it was such a treat to hear him change gears like that and not have to go to a different teacher to do that. So weeks 1 through 3 is focus on building skills for the month. What are we going to accomplish this month? Which builds up to week 4, which I'll go into more detail in a little bit, implementation week, where we kind of reflect on the month. We have a chance to perform and really refine everything we've done that month. So it's not to say that every month is an enclosed thing, but every month we try to refocus and think, what are we going to accomplish this month? And it's kind of like this rhythm that repeats each month, so every month builds momentum and culminates in week 4 each month. So like I said before, weeks 1 through 3 is kind of like a build and develop what we're working on. The group lessons give that structure each week, that they know that they're coming to that each week. They have that accountability where they want to bring their best foot forward and perform in front of their peers. The collaboration, they get the feedback throughout the week, which I'll talk about how that works in a minute. And Jocelyn talks about that in the chat as well. And skills are developed through consistent practice and check-ins. And then here's this last bullet point. I just want to briefly mention, what is implementation week? So during week 4, the DBM studio completely flips itself on its side and opens up new opportunities for students. It's almost like a week to kind of sum up everything we've done. Every week 4, we have something called a Coffee House concert. And it's this online performance where students come together to perform anything they want. Sometimes it's something they're working on. Sometimes it's just something for fun. Sometimes it's something they're working on with a different private teacher, which I never get involved in that. But if they want to have an extra performance space to do that, I always welcome that. Some of my students, many of my students also have a voice teacher, and they come to me for more of the overall community atmosphere, the performance opportunities. So implementation week, we have a Coffee House concert. I restructure my schedule so that I can have office hours available so that students can come in to get extra one-on-one support. And it's also a chance for them to really dig deep and submit some of their best feedback videos because they have a little more flexibility in their schedule. So week 4 is something we always build towards each month. And finally, I do communicate with the students via email. We do a reflection back and forth. I ask them to reflect on the past month. So there's always this sense of thinking about what we've accomplished this month and reflecting. So let's talk about the group lesson experience briefly. I just want to acknowledge another note in the chat here. Yes, so Kelly's saying we've gone from piano lessons to singing auditions and back again, depending on the season. Yeah, I like to be able to do that because I think being a musician is not it's not a simple thing. It can be very complex, and the student that I've taught that Kelly's referring to went from singing auditions to learning Taylor Swift to back to a song, to learning the piano lesson book and wanting to read notes and music theory. Whatever is going to just culminate in helping a student become an overall happy and informed musician. So back to the group lessons here. So like I said, about 4 to 10 students, depending on the size of the group. The way a group lesson looks, I'm going to talk in more detail in just a minute, but it is such a welcoming atmosphere. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants to see everybody succeed. People get a chance to share their progress. What are they working on? What are their challenges? What's going well? What's not going so well? And every week, I just adapt what I'm doing based on what the students tell me. And obviously in a group atmosphere, there's going to be a lot of collaboration, that people are going to be discussing things in the chat and everyone's sharing what they're up to. Now, if we dig a little bit deeper here, what does an actual group lesson look like? It always begins with a friendly, warm welcome. How's everybody doing? What's going on in school? And as I get to know the students, I'm going to ask them those individual questions. Hey, how's tech week going for the musical? Hey, how's finals going? It's the end of the marking period. Because we're really, being a musicians together is not just about the music. It's about building that camaraderie as well. So we always start with a friendly welcome. People kind of share what they're up to. And then we get down to business. We ask everybody to talk about, and this is part of that ownership piece too. You want to talk about not losing focus. That every week you're going to be giving an update on what you're working on. That changes the mindset of the musician because they want to come oh, I don't really know what I did this week. Nope. They want to talk about what they worked on, how did it go, what were their successes, what were their challenges, what do they have coming up maybe that they're a little bit anxious about. That is a great opportunity for everyone to talk about those things. And it also helps me to adapt too. I know that sometimes I can tell if a student's overwhelmed or stressed, and I will adapt what I'm doing. And I'll think, you know what, this is a night where they're going to want to do something that's a little more creative, a little more freeing, and less about structure. Because especially high school students, sometimes they get very busy with midterms or finals, and they need a week to just unplug and do something that is just therapeutic and musical as opposed to rigorous. That the adaptability is really important. So those conversations help to guide what I'm going to do that night. I kind of take what am I saying? Take the temperature of how everyone's doing that week, and then we go into breakout rooms. That's one of the great things about being an online music teacher. I can send everybody to a breakout room for some focused practice with individual check-ins with me. And then what I do is I visit each student and I check in with them, give them some quick feedback. And by that point, we've already been in communication through the feedback submissions. So it's really just more how are things going and, what do we want to share tonight? Which leads me to my final point, which is we usually finish each group session with a spotlight performance or 2 or 3 or 5, depending on how many people want to perform that night. So I always encourage the students that even if you're not fully ready or fully prepared, you should share something you're working on. Even if it's 4 measures of a piano piece or maybe a section of a song you've been working on. So I always encourage students to do that. And those breakout rooms are the quick in-between moment where I say, hey, how's it going? What are you working on? How's your progress? They'll sing a little bit for me, play an instrument, and they say, oh, you know what? You should share that tonight. And then when we bring it to the sharing portion, not only do they share and they get the affirmations from their classmates in the chat. We always applaud performances. I'll give them some couple quick feedback tips as well. What a huge accomplishment. I mean, it's normalized now, but in the beginning, students realize that wasn't so bad. I made a few mistakes, but I just played in front of a whole room full of people. So that's a big part of it. And typically, like I said, they end with performances, reflections, and group engagement. And we come up with a plan for next week. So that's a little bit of an overlook of how it looks like. Now, I mentioned the breakout practice a second ago. What's nice about that is that students, it's a combination of 2 things. Everybody goes into their breakout room with a concise, clear goal. What are they working on tonight? So they have a little bit of time to work on their own, built into the group lesson. And then they know that I'm going to be stopping by to check in with them. Depending on the amount of time we have, sometimes we have less time than others, but anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes per student. We'll do some check-ins and decide how are we doing with this? What are your challenges? And then that usually leads to, hey, you know what? I want to make a video for you. Make sure you submit for a feedback request tonight or whenever the next one is so I can dig deeper. Because That eliminates the need to fit it in or talk fast or try to get it done. So these check-ins are great to kind of take it where we're at, share something at the end of class, and kind of go from there. But the check-ins are all personalized because it's just one-on-one check-ins before we bring it back to the group. So it's a combination of start with the group, go to breakout rooms, and then come back together at the end to share. So they get that individual attention even though we're in a group environment. The spotlight performances are huge because that's always at the end of class, and it's a chance for people to really showcase what they've accomplished that week. Even if it's imperfect, it's just, I always tell the students, like, progress is inevitable. Flaws are going to be inevitable, but like you're only going to get better each time you share your progress. So sometimes they have a fully prepared piece. Sometimes, like I had a couple students recently, like they had a recital coming up or an audition coming up, so they would do the whole thing. And usually in cases like that, I get to give them extra practice, you know? So if I have a student has a big audition coming up, I let them have a stage. You know, we all sit back and listen, and we give them that experience. How do you recreate an audition for someone? It's not that easy. You can't just tell the directors to give you a practice audition. That's one of the things that the group environment does. It gives people the atmosphere that they usually fear and they're not ready for, and they do it right here weekly. So let's see, what did I want else to add about spotlight performances? Of course, it gives everyone an opportunity to give feedback, to encourage, to react. You know, when someone's doing songwriting, for example, like people get to react to their lyrics, their music, and it's very validating for people to get those affirmations. All right, let me take a look at the chat here. Let's see, audition feedback. Yes. So Madison's in the chat chiming in. And, you know, one of the nice things about feedback, we'll talk about in a minute, is that it's not locked into a tight schedule. You know, we don't have to wait until the lesson to talk about it. So we'll talk about that flexibility in a minute. And Jean is jumping in, talking about her son. Logan's an example of someone that does several different instruments. And the fact that I'm not just a piano teacher and that Logan can pick up a guitar or even his alto saxophone one week and share that with the class, not only gives Logan or another student the flexibility to share different musical skills, but how about the people in the group that get to hear different instruments and be exposed to that? You know, there's so much, you know, cross-pollination of different music and instruments that it's just, it really keeps the variety fresh. Oh, just skipped a screen there. Now I'm going to go back to what Jocelyn was talking about, the asynchronous feedback. So, you know, you might wonder like, well, how can a student get that customization, that personalization? And this is where it really comes in. Students can submit videos to me on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. That's 3 times a week. They can either perform something for me, sing or play an instrument, or they can send me some specific questions or requests. So like, give you an example, I have a piano student named Emmy. She's only 7. She has been quite simply just saying, send me the next piano lesson. So I go to the next page in her piano book, I make a little tutorial video, I send it her way, and guess what? At the next group lesson, she already knows the song. If that's not an example of accelerated progress, then I don't know what is. That a student can learn a whole song in their piano lesson book without my help because they requested it a few days before the lesson. That is one way that results come faster. And then Jocelyn mentioned that, like, you know, in my studio particularly, I'm not just a voice teacher or just a piano teacher. So Jocelyn has submitted songwriting ideas, but also audition feedback videos, you know, like and get another perspective on how the preparation for an audition is coming. Logan, for example, is one of my other students, is a composer. I've encouraged him to do this, and when he does, I get so excited. He says, hey, I wrote a new song. I want you to create a reaction video. Like literally just react and talk about his musical style, his form and all that. You know, so just there's so many different ways that a student can interact with me up to 3 times a week. And that's in addition to the group lesson we get. So feedback is always returned within 24 hours and the support feels so continuous. It's not, oh geez, has it been a week already? Oh, I guess it's time for lessons again. No, the students have a chance to have several touch points with me throughout the week. And having those touch points allow them to really stay on track and not forget about music lessons. I just wanted to add that point. I know parents, that's a real sticking point, you know, because I know in the past when I was more of a traditional teacher that, you know, sometimes the students would just kind of forget, you know, but like, you know, knowing that there's extra opportunities throughout the week and knowing that you're going to a group lesson each week, it keeps them more focused, knowing that, okay, there's an accountability there. Like I want to make sure I'm staying in touch with Mr. Beal, asking for that feedback and knowing what I'm going to talk about at my group lesson. So, how do they use the feedback? I kind of just elaborated on this a little bit, but they submit performance videos to get personalized feedback. So, like if it's a singer, one of my voice students, for example, I will pause the video while I'm watching them sing, and I'll give them feedback on what they could be doing better vocally. Maybe if they're an actress, like, hey, how could you be more in character there? If it's a piano player, I help fix rhythms, fix mistakes. Guitar player, how to fix finger position, tone. If it was songwriting, I make some suggestions on like a melody, or could this lyric be tweaked, or I try playing some music along with it. So just whatever it is, I personalize my responses, and then they have a resource to watch 1, 2, 5, 7 times, however many times they need to improve upon what I've suggested. Students request demonstrations, resources, or specific guidance. They get help with technique, repertoire, practice strategies, and more. And here's the thing too, and I want to say this to the parents real quick. What I found over the years is that a student will practice wrong. I will give them something to do in a traditional lessons format, and then unfortunately, they will learn it wrong in a way for the rest of the week. And then the next week, on that precious 30-minute time block, I might spend half the lesson undoing the things they did wrong. The idea of submitting a feedback video during the week prevents that from happening, because I can get them back on track, get them adjusted. So that's a big sticking point for parents. Like, you don't want them to waste their time doing it wrong. One way to fix that is to send a quick video so I can say, yep, you're on the right track. Ooh, fix this though, before you come to the next lesson. So the adjustments and the improvements. So what we're creating here is this continuous loop of practice, getting feedback, instant progress. So like I said, there's several touch points throughout the week. They can stay connected with the group lessons and the asynchronous feedback. They always feel like I'm in their corner, as I like to say, like that idea of musical mentorship. I do want to point out that several students in my studio, I have 2 different tiers in my studio. I've got tier 1 and tier 2. So a tier 1 student attends 1 group lesson per week, gets all of the opportunities to perform, to engage with other people, to get the breakout rooms with me. But I have several students that are in my tier 2 program. They actually come to 2 group lessons per week, which means exposure to more musicians, more students, more performance opportunities, more one-on-one live time with me. So just something to consider, depending on how serious the student might be about music. Being a tier 2 student, you can dig even deeper into the community aspect and having twice as many performance opportunities. Everybody gets up to 3 feedback submissions per week. Multiple touch points create consistent guidance and accountability. And by the way, during implementation week, there's still 3 feedback submissions, but a student may also come to an office hour, and they might also perform at the coffee house concert. So we might have up to 5 interactions in 1 week. That is much, much more than your traditional music lesson format. So how can I summarize all this, I guess? I just went over a lot of information. If you really wanted to take a zoom out of the DBM studio, weekly group lessons is kind of the core learning environment. That's where the live interaction occurs, the progress updates, the individual check-ins and breakout rooms, and those so important spotlight performances where students know Mr. Beal is going to encourage me to sing or play something tonight, and that they have something to look forward to each week with that. Students submitting work between sessions, that's those asynchronous feedback requests they put in, where they send me their progress, send me their updates. The ongoing feedback helps them to guide their improvement throughout the week so they don't get lost, they don't know if they're practicing wrong, they know what they're doing. Regular performance opportunities such as coffee house concerts and recitals, that is a monthly feature. They get at the group lessons, they get to perform, and then we have our once a month coffee house concerts during week 4. I will specify though, for those of you that are watching this maybe as a replay, that my recitals are in person if you are local enough or willing to drive. I do teach in the Bucks County area, and we usually have our recitals in Doylestown. However, the online coffee house concerts are 10 months a year, and as I grow, I will probably expand that to 12 months a year to make sure that we have a more bigger one at the same month as my in-person recital. But really what the DBM studio is, it's a consistent structure that supports learning, practice, and growth. And it's built for ongoing progress, not just weekly instruction. So I guess one thing I want to just start to wrap up here is like, what do the students experience? And, I have to say, I really appreciate some of my students here tonight that are checking in on the chats. And then let's see here. Kelly chimed in and saying like being able to communicate with you directly via chat and videos have been a game changer as far as accountability goes. My teens are more likely to put in the practice time between lessons when they can check in. I can completely relate to that, Kelly, because I know that we have such busy students. Let's be honest. Any parents watching this, you know that sports and school and karate and dance and siblings that you have to drive other places. Like there's so much going on. But knowing that when you get a free minute, a free 5 minutes or a free 20 minutes, knowing that you can check in with Mr. Beal and send him a quick video or a feedback request, and knowing that, okay, like I can take advantage of the time I have now and know that when Mr. Beal sends me a video, I may not get to look at it till Saturday morning, but it'll be waiting for me. And then you have something that you know to check in with, you know. So I think being able to have that is a really big deal for parents and students with busy schedules. So just going back to what students experience, you know, there's measurable progress. You know, we're constantly reflecting and thinking about each month, like what is our progress? The increased confidence in performing and sharing music, especially my songwriters and my composers, they get to do it on a weekly basis. And I'm not aware of many situations where that is possible, except in like a traditional recital or in school, you know, maybe a choir, a band, or orchestra, or a club. But outside of school, I think that my program offers that unique opportunity to share and perform with people on a consistent basis. Stronger practice habits and independence is a big thing. When you have that interaction and touch points, you're going to be more focused on your practicing. Growth across multiple musical skills. Like I said before, I'm very fortunate that I teach many different things: voice, piano, guitar, songwriting, and music theory are usually the 5 things I talk about. And one additional note, I do specialize in working with pre-college music education majors. I have several students in my studio that have, one of the reasons they joined my studio is because they wanted to prepare for college. They want to be music teachers someday. So I don't just cover instruments, but we talk about what to expect as a teacher. We talk about educational philosophy. I give them a chance to teach me. You know, we do more advanced topics like ear training. So if anybody watching this knows someone that's considering a career in music education, this is the perfect place for you, because I am very passionate preparing future music educators. Just something to keep in mind. So a clear direction, ongoing guidance week to week, and a sense of momentum. You know, momentum, talking about each month building up to different things. Which, by the way, I didn't actually have a slide on this tonight. I talked about it a little more yesterday, but I wanted to mention that the Coffee House concert is a big part of my program. During week 4, implementation week, I restructure my schedule to make sure that one of those nights is a online Coffee House concert performance, and talk about a coming together of students with their families, their friends, and a sharing of progress, and knowing that every month students have an opportunity. And by the way, they can't always attend it live. I've had several students pre-record something just to go through that experience of culmination. And even though they can't make it, they will prepare a video that I can share it at the coffee house. Yes, it's not them live in the room, but it's still a sense of ownership, pride, and accomplishment. And then Joan says in the chat, you address the problems and disappointments that can occur with traditional music lessons. I imagine the consistent connection and opportunity to collaborate helps to maintain interest. Yeah, I think that traditional lessons format is more one and done in 30 minutes, and it's easy to kind of forget or to stall or to not feel connected throughout the week. Sorry, I just jumped ahead on the slide by accident there. So that's really one of my goals. Coffee houses is always enjoyable. Yeah, a chill and low-key atmosphere where you can perform songs. Oh, Jocelyn, that's you. Sorry. There are a couple J's in the chat. We've got Joseph, Joan, and Jocelyn. Oh, Jocelyn, I'm so glad you feel that way. One of my students is chiming in saying, like, it's so low key. And that's how it should be, guys. Like, music should be something we all enjoy together. It doesn't have to be this academic, like, graded, critical, like, you know, everything has to be perfect thing, you know? Like, perfection is never achievable. Like, we want to enjoy and share our gifts. And I love that it does help you to overcome the pressure. It helps you to normalize mistakes. I always tell my students, you know, be prepared to make a mistake. The question is how do you adapt, you know? And I think the Coffee House concerts are really a centerpiece of my program. I just wanted to talk about that. So I wanted to just leave you with that last word of momentum. I think every month we are building momentum and they're taking accountability in their learning. So, you know, to sum all this up, I just wanted to let you take a moment to think about everything I covered tonight, because really the purpose of doing this call is to share what I'm doing in my studio. And the next step is to schedule the time to meet with me, to schedule a one-on-one discovery call so that I can learn about your student, your son, your daughter, or your friend or family member. What are their goals and needs? Because it's very important to me that I find out their path, not my path, their path, and then talk about the benefits they would get from joining our community, and then reflect on what their future would be. Those three pillars I mentioned earlier. It would give them a question to answer and ask me any questions they have about the program and see if the DBM studio is the right fit. So the best way to do that is to go to my website, danielbillmusic.com. When you go there, you'll see there's several places to click to book a call with me. I have appointments all throughout the month of April, and I would love, to meet anybody that's interested in possibly joining my studio. I have a lot of supportive people here tonight. I mean, obviously, if you know anybody, that's the best place to send them to my website, danielbillmusic.com. And if you want to keep up with some of my social media things, I'm pretty active on Daniel Beal Music on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. That's where I'm kind of giving the weekly updates and talking about all of that. So I actually don't have that much more to add tonight. So I just want to close in saying that I really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here tonight to listen to me talk about something I'm very passionate about. I think ultimately what I'm trying to accomplish here is just take the knowledge and the gifts that I've been given and impart them on people in a different way. I've been teaching private lessons for years, and the reason I started this business the way I have now is I realized that I was not giving my students enough, that the schedule I had was too limited and they weren't getting the support they needed. So that is my goal, is to welcome people into my studio that love music. They want to be seen as an individual. They want to feel a sense of community and maybe overcome any fear that's holding them back from sharing their gift with others and learn how to perform in front of other people. And also help them to realize that music is not just something you do as a side thing right now. It can become a part of your future and something that you appreciate for the rest of your life. So if anybody has any questions or anything they want to put into the chat, I'm happy to stick around for a minute here. Joan put in a final comment that confidence building and comfort with performing for others is priceless. Yeah, how do you put weight on that? Like how do you explain to someone the value of not being afraid to share anything in front of other people? Especially music, playing an instrument or singing. I think I got all the comments in the chat. I want to particularly thank Madison and Jocelyn and Noah. Had a couple students here in the chat tonight. It is such a pleasure to work with you guys, and you guys are the proof of what I'm seeing. I didn't get a chance to elaborate on Noah tonight, but Noah is one of my very talented piano players in my program, and just seeing him build the confidence to play in front of other peers every week and take some really challenging music, and me letting him play whatever music he likes. And like I said, with Jocelyn to do songwriting, which is such a vulnerable thing, but she's found a place to do it here, to write her own lyrics and really express herself. And Madison to cover so many different genres of music and to prepare for auditions and learn and get such a great opportunity to perform in front of people. These are just three examples. I have a whole studio of people that I've loved seeing them develop and really find themselves as musicians. So in closing, I just want to once again thank everybody for being here. It's been such a pleasure presenting to you tonight. And I hope that some of you out there watching this on replay, I would love to meet you and talk to you about how the Daniel Boone Music Studio could be a right fit for you. So thank you so much, everybody. And I'll be sharing this replay out with everybody later, and hope to see you all soon. Thanks again. Have a good night, everyone.